stroke. Justin, start right here.
a junior in Clark Atlanta University before I had the opportunity to hear a masterclass speaker. So you are light years ahead of my generation in having this opportunity. Secondly, this is someone who graduated from this district. So this shows you the possibilities that you have coming out of this district and out of this program. So I want you to make sure that you pay attention. Please do not use your cell phones. Please do not play and talk with your classmates. This is a great opportunity. Take advantage of it. Listen, get as much information as you can. It will profit you later in life, even before you graduate. It will probably bring great benefits for you. I have one of my students who just won first place at regionals for prepared speech. She's going to come and introduce our speaker. Welcome, Naomi Jackson, and then the next voice will be our speaker today.
LaShanda Korley is a distinguished professor in the departments of materials science, as well as engineering and chemical, as well as biomolecular engineering at the University of Delaware. Previously, she has held the Kleinwell Associate Professorship of Macromolecular Science and Engineering at Case Western Reserve University, where she started her independent career in 2007. Professor Korley is the director of an Engineer Frontier Research Center for Plastics Innovation, funded by the Department of Energy, and also the co-director of a Materials Research Science Center of Hybrid, Active, and Responsive Materials. She is also the principal investigator for the National Science Foundation Partnerships for International Research and Education, which is inspired by biomaterials and systems, and the co-director of the Center for Research in Soft Matter and Polymers at the University of Delaware. She received a Bachelor's in Science in Chemistry and Engineering from Clark Atlanta University, as well as a Bachelor's in Science in Chemical Engineering from the Georgia Institute of Technology in 1999. Professor Korley completed her doctoral studies at MIT in Chemical Engineering and the program in Polymer Science and Technology in 2005. And she was the recipient for the Provost Academic Diversity Postdoctoral Fellowship at Cornell University in 2005. She was named DuPont Young Professor in 2011, received the $33 million non-tenure faculty grant in 2010, and was selected for the National Academy of Engineering Frontiers at Science Symposium. Professor Korley is a fellow of the American Institute for Medical and Biological Sciences, the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, and the American Physical Society, the American Chemical Society Engineers, and the American Physical Society. She is also a part of the Royal Society of Chemistry. She also was awarded the National Organization for Professional Fellowship of Black Chemists and Chemical Engineers, Lloyd N. Ferguson Young Scientist Award for the Excellence in Research, and the American Institute for Chemical Engineers Minority Affairs Committee. Most recently, Professor Korley was appointed a U.S. Science Envoy by the U.S. State Department. Her research focuses on bio-inspired polymeric materials, film and fiber manufacturing, plastics recycling and upcycling strategies, stimulating responses, composites, peptide polymer hybrids, fiber reinforced hydrogels, and renewable materials derived from biomass.
So hopefully can everyone hear me?
Hold up a little bit. Hold on, more towards the road. Yeah, hold it, power button down all the way. Hold it down. No, just hold it all the way down. Nicholas, you're good.
Perfect. Wonderful. I am delighted to be here with everyone today. Even though it was many moons ago when I was here as a high school student, I remember the opportunities to speak to people who had career paths that I was interested in. So I'm really excited to be here, to be back home. And so today I want to just share kind of my journey. I do want to...
A little bit closer for you.
Okay.
To here.
Got it. Is that better?
You want an actual mic instead? Okay, is that good?
Okay, perfect. I do want to make this interactive, so if you have questions, I would love for you to stop me, just, talk about my journey. So I'll start a little bit telling you, so I, of course, am from Macon. I lived in Bloomfield. I actually went to W.T. Morgan Elementary School. I went to McAvoy Middle School, and I went to Southwest High School. Okay? So I know things have changed a little bit, but during my time as a high school student here, I actually was captain of our cheerleading team, right? So that's me over in the left. I also was involved in a lot of different activities, Beta Club, involved in things like the science team, those types of activities. So I wanted just to share, in terms of my journey, all of the things that made me a well-rounded person, but also helped to launch me on my career path. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the activities and things that I did. So how did I get started on my STEM pathway? So I really appreciate that wonderful introduction and how you display all the things. But for me, it started as a dream as a young student. Really a chalkboard. I knew I wanted to be a professor. Most of my family is in the education field. And so in thinking about that, I always dreamed about being able to educate and to support people. And for me, the way to do that was through science. I also didn't see a lot of scientists who looked like me. And so as a high school student, I had the great opportunity, as part of a program at Southwest, and introduce a girl to engineering in my 9th grade year. And Georgia Tech had this fantastic program where they bust a lot of us up to Georgia Tech. And I got to sit in a room with people, women, other people of color, and to be able to see myself on the path that I wanted to. And I was really, really excited about what engineers could do. And hopefully I'll share a little bit about that as we walk through that pathway. What I did as a high school student was during the summer after my 10th grade year, there are many, many programs that I could apply to. And I had the great opportunity to be accepted into programs at Tuskegee University and at Auburn University, where I was introduced to the many fields of engineering, okay? So I learned about chemical engineering, I learned about material science, I learned about electrical engineering. In chemical engineering, I was drawn to because of a couple of things. Every time I tried to build something, it fell down. I was not a builder, so I wasn't gonna be a mechanical engineer, I wasn't gonna be a civil engineer. Every circuit I tried to put together actually started sparking. So I knew I wasn't going to do electrical engineering. But chemical engineering really, really drew to me because I could think about how to put things together at a different level and to make new materials with different function. And so what did I do in terms of classes? Sparked by that interest, I started to take honors chemistry classes. I took AP Calculus, I took biology, I took physics classes here. And I talked to the people who are around me, right? So I talked to my counselor, I talked to my teachers, I talked to my peers, anyone who would listen to share the dream that I had for myself, which is to launch myself as a chemical engineer and to ultimately be a professor. And I was very fortunate that there were many people who were there to support me along that path. I also started to think about how would I build my application package. Many of you may be thinking about what are you going to be doing for college and how do you build that application. So all of those activities that I talked about, being captain of the cheerleading squad was a way for me to think about leadership, right? And stretching myself beyond what I may have always thought that I was going to do. Being involved in Beta Club and doing science team helped to show my interest in science. But also volunteering in the community was important, right? So all of those things helped to shape, along with my grades, my application package for college. And for me, that was also about creating experiences and exploring new things. Believe it or not, high school students from around the world end up contacting me just via email or through LinkedIn to say, hey, can you share your story? Hey, can you talk to our classroom about some of the things that you're doing? And I'm not the only person who gets those kinds of emails and calls, okay? So being able to create new experiences. I tried to reach out to people that I didn't have around me to ask the question, what do you do? What is a chemical engineer? What are materials? What are polymers? And I learned about those different things. Also, don't be afraid to explore new things, right? Every opportunity, every encounter gives you a way to share what you're interested in so someone can make a connection for you. You have all of these people who are around the room right now who care about you, who want to see you succeed. And in being able to share your story, you're building a bridge and creating connections that will be able to help you launch you on your path. So you have teachers, you have advocates, you have peer networks. Share your vision and don't be afraid to do that. I ended up at Clark Atlanta University, and the reason why I ended up at Clark Atlanta University, again, I knew I wanted to be a chemical engineer, but I had a cheerleading friend who was a year ahead of me, and she also was interested in engineering. She found out about a fellowship at Clark Atlanta University, and when she came home over the winter break, she actually said, "Hey, LaShanda, you should apply for this," right? That gave me, I would have never known about the fellowship, but that gave me a full ride to Clark Atlanta University and to Georgia Tech, right? Debt-free, going to college. I got to be able to explore my passion and also have a different experience. But if she hadn't known what I was interested in, I would have never had that discussion with her. Scholarships apply for everything. If I go back through my records of different scholarships that I got when I was in high school, I applied for things from the radio station, any club that had something, $1,000 here, $2,000 there. Most of the time it's a few 100-word essays to be able to apply for. Those are my memories of being able to do that, and at the end of the day, even with this full ride, I still was able to pay for books and other things that I needed because I had other fellowships that I applied for. In choosing a major, for me, I was, focused, but when I talk to people, in fact, I have a 17-year-old daughter who's going through the college application process right now. I think about what you're passionate about, right? What is going to help you launch yourself to where you are, right? And that may not be exactly what you think about traditional fields. So biology or chemistry or engineering or other types of fields. There are other ways that you can build an interdisciplinary program or combine multiple passions, right? So you could be interested in medicine, but also be interested in international relationships or culture. And you can combine those fields together to do something new and different. And college is about creating an experience that allows you to thrive, to be successful, and to launch yourself into a way that you can really change the world. And to me, that's what my pathway has been about. So as mentioned, I have a chemistry degree and engineering degree from Clark Atlanta University. Clark Atlanta was a fantastic experience in the sense that I really was able to experience a place where there was a lot of support, right? So my English teacher, if you didn't come to class, was always the one who would go to your dorm room and say, "You better come to class," right? So you had a family, you had a built-in family. And I also created lifelong networks of people who really cared about launching our culture, right? And so that was extremely important. Georgia Tech was a very interesting experience because I was forced to be in an environment where there were large numbers of people from all over the world, right? So coming from my experience at Southwest, going to Clark Atlanta, and then going to Georgia Tech really opened my eyes to the world, right? So I had students in my classrooms from all over the country, all over the world. I had teachers who were from countries I'd never heard of, right? And in that experience, I really got an opportunity to see what the world looked like and how I could change it, okay? And so, again, setting myself up from experiences. I also had the opportunity to be involved in 2 scholarship programs that were instrumental and that I still interact with today. One is through the American Chemical Society, a scholars program. That program provides not only financial support, but it also provided a network of people who were in the chemical sciences. So I had built-in mentors and support folks to really be able to help me in my career. I also love my Clark Atlanta University Prism D family, and that program was set up exactly to do what I wanted to do, which was to launch a career as a professor. So it was to create more people of color in the professoriate or in the academic ranks. Summer internships are extremely important. I was fortunate, so I had a vision for myself, but that's not always the case, right? But I wanted to make sure that I explored everything around me. So during my time as an undergraduate student, I decided to not only explore academia, so I went to Virginia Tech where I fell in love with polymers and got to do that. But I also had the opportunity to work for industry and national labs. Why did I do that? Because I wanted to make sure that I had a full set of experiences so that I knew that I was making the right decision for myself. So this is where I said sample the space that's around you and the opportunities that are given to you. I had fantastic mentors. Dr. Yayaboa, who's at Clark Atlanta University, was my first mentor as an undergraduate student. And what he taught me was to always strive for excellence, but to be compassionate and supportive in that process. And then I also had a fantastic mentor at Virginia Tech, Dr. Tom Ward, who I remember during the summers when my parents would come and drop me off and then pick me up. He actually took the time to meet my parents. He took the time to say, LaShanda, you can do this. You're on the right path. So having someone who is willing and supportive to speak into your life is the type of people that you need around you. In undergraduate, and I think this is also relevant for high school, is that you need to learn balance. You need to learn how to communicate. And you need to have a vision and some self-reliance on what you want to do. And then you also want to make sure that you have experiential learning. We often say this is what I want to do, but we don't take the time to figure out what that is. So you're in a great environment where you get to actually sample a lot of these different aspects, but I didn't have that opportunity. I went to MIT for my graduate program, and I will say this is where I think you don't want to set limits for yourself. When I was a undergraduate student, I actually never thought that I could go to MIT. And so for those who are not familiar, MIT is the top engineering school in the country, okay? Never thought I was going to go there because I didn't think it was for me. I didn't have that level for myself. And this is where I say you never should count yourself out. You should never feel like you don't belong in a certain space. Everyone in here belongs exactly where they're supposed to be, right? And you can make room for yourself in that space. For me, it was my professor, Dr. Yayaboa, who went to MIT, who was like, you better apply. There were no ifs, ands, or about it, right? So I'm sure you have teachers and counselors here who say the same thing. You are supposed to be here. You're supposed to apply for this. You're supposed to do this. And so I applied to 3 places for grad school. I applied to Virginia Tech because I already had a mentor there. I applied to Georgia Tech, and I applied to MIT, never thinking that I would get in. But when I got in and I went there, I could see myself there, and I knew the support that I would have, and I had fantastic mentors there. In graduate school, I learned lessons of community. I learned lessons of faith and mentoring, all about service and all about teaching. And as was mentioned before, I went through, I did a postdoc at Cornell, and I went to Case Western as a faculty member, and now I'm at the University of Delaware. Just to kind of pictorially show you this, so I've been talking about these people, but these people are very special to me. So here, I went to, again, Clark Atlanta University. That's Professor Yaboa. And I heard Clark Atlanta, so we know the mottos here, right? So I'll find a way or make one, and culture for service, right? And so that is extremely important. Those are ideals and values that I think are important for all of us to be able to take hold to. So for me, I learned about connections, confidence building, mentoring, and compassion, okay? As part of my time at Clark Atlanta. At Georgia Tech, I learned to be more outgoing and inquisitive, okay? I am by nature more of an introvert, but I learned that there are ways in which we can create spaces in which we can be more outgoing and more extroverted to build those connections that we need. So sometimes we need to step outside of our comfort zone to launch ourselves to where we need to go. I also, as I mentioned, learned a lot about diversity of thought and awareness and about leadership. And for me, a lot of that came through my time. So there I pledged a sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And for me, being able to really live out this service to all mankind. So that everything that I do is about serving other people, right? It's about making the world around me a better place. And in doing that, when I think about the things that I'm doing, it helps me want to strive for more. Here, I like coming home, but I don't like the heat. I know it's a little cold right now, but usually it's hot. So I'm not a Georgia heat person. So I escaped during the summers as much as I can as an undergrad to the hills of Virginia, where this was my mentor, Tom Ward. And he taught me everything about polymers. My first research publication was from Tom Ward. He taught me more than that. He talked to me about research. He talked to me about mentoring. He was a fantastic mentor to all his students. He also taught me to take care of ourselves, right? So you all are, striving to do well in your classes. You all are, taking care and doing other things. You might be working. You might be helping out with your family. But there is a real importance on self-care. We have to learn how to take care of ourselves. So for him, that was running. So I fell in love with running. That could be going to a yoga class. That could be reading a book. But taking time for yourself to center yourself and to really protect yourself is important. So he taught me a lot about that. I was fortunate to go again to MIT. And I had some fantastic mentors. I got married while I was there. I had some supportive people. The woman on the right, she is the first Black chemical engineering professor at MIT, and she happened to be my mentor. So I was blessed to have someone who looked like me as a role model to launch myself in that path. My godmother, who's on the bottom here, she is still a blessing, and that connection to her has been important. And I don't want to be remiss about talking about family, right, and how important it is that they are also with you on this journey, in whatever form that takes. So here a picture of my parents. So my sister told a story yesterday about me saying that I was under the hood working and when I was in grad school, right? And whatever that means. And I used to tell my parents that. And this is a picture. I actually got to take them to my lab when I was in grad school at MIT to show them what I was doing when I was working under the hood, doing my chemical experiments. And it was important to have them on this journey, praying for me, supporting me, guiding me, being with me. And so at MIT, I learned about culture of excellence. I learned about the importance of friends who become family members, right? I learned about my internal strength to persevere and overcome even in the face of challenges. This is where I ended up running. And then I traveled to New York. Never thought I would live in Ithaca, New York, but I went there for grad school. And ended up, this is my now 17-year-old daughter. Here I learned a lot of things, and I think this is important for all of us to know. One is that sometimes you have to forge your own path. There may not be a set of guidelines for what you need to do. There may not be a road map for what you want to do, but sometimes you have to create your own path and opportunities. You have to break through barriers. There were a lot of barriers set up for me when I went to Cornell University. And I had to build my own support system. I had to learn how to strategize and eliminate all the noise of people who say you don't belong there, right? So this is where pulling on your own internal strength is important. You also never know who's watching you. You never know who is looking at you and the way you're walking your path, because you can inspire other people even now, okay? And so that is something that I had to learn when I was there. So I want to switch gears from talking about kind of my path, although I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, to talk a little bit about why I chose chemical engineering and what do chemical engineers actually do. There are a lot of words on this slide, but chemical engineering really is around understanding the physics, the chemistry, and the biology of transforming materials, right? It is the basis for how we make useful products. It's how we make the chairs that you're sitting on, okay? How we make the clothes that we're wearing. And the competencies that you want to think about that you're taking from your high school experiences that are translatable across all of the different disciplines in STEM are how do we solve problems, right? Problem solving is extremely important. How do you actually quantitatively look at something? That could be a recipe, that could be, you know, a computer code, that could be how do we examine a law book? And then also how to do teamwork, right? Working together in teams is how work happens now, right? Everything is interdisciplinary. Being a chemical engineer doesn't just say I do chemical engineering, I also do biology, I also do physics, I do a variety of different things. We all have to collaborate together to be able to solve the world problems that are happening around us. So as a chemical engineer, of course you can take the technical track, but you can also do a variety of things. You can do medicine, right? So there is a lot of work where chemical engineers actually are transforming medical applications. You can also think about law. So patent law is also one that's well aligned with chemical engineering, as well as business and consulting and management. My best friend combined her chemical engineering degree with an international relations degree, and now she owns her own consulting firm. So you can do things with chemical engineering like creating drug delivery vehicles. So if you've ever had a patch to treat something and you deliver a therapeutic to yourself, that's a chemical engineer who's working on that. If you want to create the fuel that we put in our cars, chemical engineers are the ones who think about doing that. One of the things that I'll talk a little bit about later that I do is how do we combat plastics waste? So every water bottle, every paper or cup, plastic plate that we throw away, what are we actually doing with that? How do we solve that particular problem? So chemical engineers think about that. Now, in terms of high school preparation, so I often have to talk to students about this. So shadowing chemical engineering or other STEM professionals, being able to think about things as a system, right? So that things are not done in isolation. You're not just learning calculus for the sake of learning calculus. You're not learning physics for the sake of learning physics. All of those things work together to solve problems. Take as many advanced math, physics, chemistry, biology courses that you can. Summer internships. Think about how you can connect your STEM interests to your other interests, right? So STEM, connects with cuisine, it connects with music, it connects with sports, right? All of those things work together. So you don't have to, when you think about your extracurriculars, you don't have to say, okay, I really don't want to do STEM club, or I really don't want to do this engineering team. There are other ways in which you can take your STEM interest and combine them with other things that you are talking about. Communication skills are also extremely important. How we communicate, how we talk about the work that we do, how do we talk about the interests that we have, how do we visually put together a presentation to talk about our work. That's important. So learning how to do that. When you're thinking about college, are you someone who wants to just be in a classroom? Or are you someone who wants to have experiential opportunities? Do you want to have lab components? Do you want to actually be able to see how what you're learning in the classroom translates to what you'll do after 4 years? Do you want to travel abroad? All of those things are important as you're choosing the colleges that you're interested in. And then you want to think about how you best learn. Do you learn in an environment where there's a large classroom setting? Do you learn in an environment where you want to have, really have access to your teachers? Do you want to be more generally focused, or do you want to have a more interdisciplinary experience? Things now, study groups. I don't know how many of you all may study together or work together in teams, but starting now, because that's what you're going to have to do when you go to college. And then being able to align with affinity groups. So that was important for me. So being involved in NSBE, NOBUCHE, being involved again in my sorority was helpful for me to find a community of support. And those things that may seem social also help you academically, right? Because you have other people who you connect with who will help you as you launch your path. So I had people in my sorority who were also chemical engineers, but ahead of me in school. So they could help me with choosing teachers and choosing classes and things like that. Now, a lot of people are excited about chemical engineering because of the money, right? So a chemical engineer's starting salary in 2021 as a bachelor's of science was about $70,000. Over time, you are going to make in the six figures. With a PhD, around between 140 to $150,000, and it really depends on whether you take a management track or a research track. Okay, so you have the opportunity if you start out in a STEM field to say, hey, I want to do the science, or now do I want to do kind of more project management and all of these types of things, and this is where the different classes will come into play. This is, I will admit, one of the big drivers for me when I started thinking about chemical engineering was the salary. Now, who are some chemical engineers, right? So you're looking at one right now, but there are a bunch of people. So that's my advisor that I talked about before, Paula Hammond. And until December 31st, she was the department head of the MIT Chemical Engineering program. So remember I said she was the first black female chemical engineering professor. And she ended up being the head of the department, right? So she was over this top chemical engineering program. And I'm happy to say that effective January 1st, there's now another black female who's head of that particular department. Bob Langer is a chemical engineer, and he's a chemical engineer who actually said, hey, I'm interested in combining chemical engineering with medicine. So he's really kind of the father of biomedical, applying chemical engineering principles to delivering drugs. And he's someone who is had a huge part of creating the COVID-19 vaccine. Mae Jemison is the person that I thought about when I thought about being a chemical engineer. So she is an astronaut. She's also a chemical engineer and a physician. Frances Arnold is at Caltech, and she is the recipient of the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2018. But there are also people who are like Bob Gore, who created Gore-Tex. So if you have those jackets that actually repel water, those are made of Gore-Tex materials. Ann Lee is also a VP at a biopharmaceutical company. But there are also people like Ashton Kutcher and Terrence Howard and Cindy Crawford, models and actors and actresses who are also chemical engineers, right? So you can see that that kind of systems level, that problem solving is also quite applicable in other spaces. So what if you were to choose chemical engineering as a field, there are different things that you can think about it from an undergraduate perspective. You have many ways in which you can think about what you would be doing. There is a car competition, so you can use your chemical engineering principles to learn how to fuel a car or design a car. You can work in biopharmaceuticals, so I talked about things like creating vaccines and other therapeutics. There is a water purification, so you're interested in applying your knowledge globally. Being able to, water treatment is a really big problem globally, right? A lot of people don't have access to clean water, right? We are spoiled. I didn't realize that, and I'll talk a little bit in a moment about my trip. I went to Ghana recently and didn't really understand that. There are also opportunities to go to school abroad. So at Georgia Tech, if you're a chemical engineering student, you can also take a class over in London, right? Where you learn about chemical engineering. You get to be in the beautiful city of London to do that, and lots of opportunities there. So what do I do every day? So you heard I'm a chemical engineering professor. I actually run a couple of different centers. So this is my research group. We work on plastics recycling. We use nature, so trees, plants, bugs, as a way to design new materials and create more sustainable systems. I do lead 4 research centers. I collaborate with academics, industry partners, national labs. I actually have a research group that has 9 graduate students, undergraduate students, and postdocs. I teach. I coordinate undergraduate and graduate courses. I mentor and advise people, and I run workshops. I also have service opportunities, and I'll share some slides about my service in a moment as a science envoy. But I do things like sit on academic and national advisory boards. I do a lot of community engagement. I work in my professional societies in a leadership role and do workshops. And you can see that I work with different companies, right, as well as museums to think about the work that I do. So every single day is different, which is what excites me, right? So when I wake up, I look at my calendar, I may be talking to students, that could be high school students, elementary school students. I'm actually going to go to my daughter's school in a couple of weeks to talk to her AP chemistry class, right, teach a class there. But that could also mean that I'm talking to the governor, or I could be talking to the Secretary of State or the Secretary of the Smithsonian, which I did a couple of weeks ago, right? So every day is different. I get to learn something. And that all started here, right? That started with the experiences that I had, the people who poured into me, the classes that I took here, the vision that I set for myself, the community that supported me in doing that, and the family that I have who continues to really ground, center, and support me and care about me in ways that I can't even express. So I want to talk a little bit about my U.S. Science Envoy role. And here I had the opportunity, so I got an email a little over a year ago that said it was from the Secretary, the Assistant Secretary of State. I got the email, and I think I called my sister, and I was like, I think I got a spam message. Someone is trying to hack my computer system. So I did some Googling. I asked my assistants to support me in looking this up, and it was for real. And somewhere behind the scenes, because remember what I said, I told people what I wanted to do. I was passionate about it. I cared about helping other people. And behind the scenes, I didn't apply for this. Behind the scenes, someone was in the room talking about me. And they nominated me to do this, right? So it wasn't about me saying, oh, I want to do this. You have other people in the room who are advocating for you because they know what you're doing. They know the hard work that you're putting in, okay? And I got this amazing opportunity. I was one of 7 people selected, right? Didn't apply, selected to do this over the course of 2023. And I had the opportunity to go to, again, go down to the State Department to be, for this big induction ceremony, to meet people. It was fantastic. And I did 3 tours, so I'll just share kind of the 3 different places that I went. And I was selected to travel the world to talk about plastics recycling, okay? So here I was able to go to Brussels and to the European Union to sit there in front of their parliament to talk about rules around sustainable packaging. You know, I met, parliamentarians from Italy and other places, right? That was an experience that I would have never thought that I would have when I was sitting in this space. I was able to go to the Estonian Society, like the Arts and Sciences Academy there, right, to meet their preeminent scientists. I was able to tour manufacturing facilities for creating sustainable packaging and visit companies. These are experiences that I never dreamed that I would have, right? When I said I want to be a chemical engineer, I want to be a professor. But through this, I was, afforded this amazing opportunity to not only impact my life, but to impact the lives of my students. I was really excited to go to Ghana. So if you are familiar with the African culture, my last name is actually a Ghanaian last name from my husband. So my husband's family is from Ghana. His father was born in Ghana. And we were able to combine this passion of being a science envoy with also being able to go back and meet my husband's family and to really learn about the African culture. Really exciting time for a variety of reasons. And I'll go back to the story that I shared about access to clean water. Plastics recycling is a big issue. So there are plastic bottles everywhere. Right? There are a lot of braiding hair, clogging up the sewage systems. There's a lot of things that are happening in Ghana. And what I realized was that the reason their problem may be a little bit more magnified, it's different than the one we have in terms of water bottles, is because there's a lack of access to potable water in Ghana, right? They don't have sufficient water treatment plants. So you have to drink water from a water bottle if you don't want to get sick, okay? So their problem is tied to an access problem, right? So if we can think about water treatment and ways to make it more affordable, economical, those types of things. So that's the science that goes into actually what's happening societally, right? So those are the challenges that we have. Here I had the opportunity to visit the University of Ghana to talk about research. I was interviewed by the local newspaper in Accra, and during a visit to a plastics waste recycling company. I was able to put on a fantastic workshop with other countries across the African continent. And my personal favorite, because one of the things when I said I wanted to do the science envoy role is, of course, I wanted to do the science, but I also wanted to make sure that I talked to students. I wanted to talk to our high school students. I wanted to talk to especially young girls who were interested in STEM fields, right? So those are the things that I was extremely excited about. And here I got to meet with what they call the Globe Academy. So these are high schools that are focused on STEM across Ghana. And they all came together at this particular place, and I talked about what I do. I got to engage with them. I got to hear some of their pressing issues and to learn ways in which we can continue a partnership to support their training and learning in the STEM field. And then most recently, I visited South Asia. So I'll say, so in Europe, I went to Croatia, Estonia, Latvia, Brussels, and to Spain, right? Never would have had the opportunity to go to all those places. Then I went to Ghana, and then I visited South Asia. South Asia, I got to visit Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and India, right? Again, places I would have never thought when I was here that I would be visiting. It was great. I got to give some talks. There was a big workshop that I was able to participate in. The Secretary of State was involved. I visited with folks at think tanks to figure out how we can try to solve the plastics waste challenge. An amazing experience, but remember, I just want you to know, I was able to have this, not because I applied, but because people were advocating for me and I didn't even know it. So I'll leave you with just a couple of lessons that I've learned. And so at University of Delaware, all the professors got playing cards made of them, right? And so it's all superhero cards. And mine was based on Siri from Black Panther, okay? So this is a superhero card that was made for me. A couple of lessons where I say that we all have this superhero within. One is that mentoring and advocacy matter, right? And you can do that for each other, right? So it's not just the adults around you who are doing that. You can mentor and advocate for one another. And so building that network now. It may not be something that people want to talk about a lot now, but I think that diversity enhances everything and everyone, right? So to me, that makes a difference. Putting together people who are different gives you a different outcome, right? And it gives you an outcome that we may not have thought about in ways to innovate. I think it's important that wherever you go, that you try to brighten the spaces that are around you, right? And some people may think about that, picking up litter and things like that, but being a light for someone, being a support system, saying, hey, are you okay? How can I support you today, right? Those things are important. I think it's important for us to try to build a sustainable future for us all, right? And that could be through whatever, right? That could be through science, that could be through, cooking, that could be through a variety of different pathways, right? We can build sustainability in everything that we do. We have one place, we have one body, and we need to try to take care of that. I think it's important that you do something every day to fortify yourself. When I knew what time I needed to be here this morning, I knew that meant I needed to get up early, because the first thing I do every morning is I do my devotional prayer and I go and work out, right? I have to, if I don't do that, my day is not centered, right? And so for me, I have to do something every day to fortify myself. And people may say, but you're sacrificing sleep. If I don't do it, it's not going to go well for me. I also think it's important that we recognize that we're not defined by our successes or our failures. we're defined by how we respond to them, okay? So even in your success, if you are, bragging, if you're doing all these things, that also defines you. And in your failures, they don't define you. It's how you actually respond and how you use that to serve others that I think is important. I also think that you have to believe in the vision that you have for yourself, even if others don't, right? But that also means that you can't be afraid to pivot, right? So believe in yourself, but don't be afraid to pivot to what you now learn, because your sets of circumstances and experiences change. You learn something new, and you may say, hey, this is the path for me, but that's okay. And then here I'll just kind of share from what I do every day. We make materials from trees, right? So we take the trees, the leaves off the tree, we take the bark, and we do some chemical magic to it, and we can now make plastics like the backs of those chairs that you're sitting on, okay? We also can take plastic bottles and turn them into things like adhesives, into fuels, right? So we're making materials. And then we also use natural material systems, things like pine cones and spider webs, to inspire us to make new and functional material systems. So hopefully I've been able to kind of share a little bit of my journey, also what kind of motivates me and how I prepared to be in this space and the opportunities that have been afforded to me because of it. And remember, it all started here in Macon, right? As a high school student, me going through the academic system, having the people here to support me and encourage me and to create experiences for me that allowed me to launch me on this path. So I thank you all for taking the time to listen to me today, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Take your mic so I can speak to you.
No, sorry.
Good morning. All right, guys. So what an amazing opportunity we had this morning. So when you start thinking about the pathways that you're in and what your future will be, she gave you a lot of good information. She talked about her journey. And a lot of times it's important to think about your journey. What will be your next step? As you're attending multiple high schools, you're from different high schools in Macon, Georgia. And a lot of times, sometimes we think where we're at today is where we're going to continue to be. But that's not how that path is always going to go if you have a vision. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about teachers. When you go back to the classroom, how can you connect the dots for the students? How can you take words? She gave a lot of good words. And I'm going to tell you, one of the things that I left with is a mentor. That you have people rooting for you. And that you have to have a plan. And don't allow what you think you're going to do today, but something else comes up and you say, I can't do that because this is what I was going to do. You have a lot of opportunities. So I know that right now you're thinking, oh, I'm just 16, I'm 17. But we have a lot of seniors in here. And I will tell you, when you leave here and you go to college, it is a world of multiple people. And what does she tell you? You have to find your space. You have to find you. And it's going to look different. I tell you that because I know. Someone else just told you that. And you're hearing that each and every day. So you have to be able to come into a room and listen and hear and take something away. Okay? That is valuable. So I want you to give her another round of applause. Do any of you have any questions? And I think you got a question in the back. You want to come up and so we can hear you? Okay.
How do you balance your work life? So in terms of balancing my work life, so I tried to create community and spaces, right? So for me, I knew the work that I had to do, so time management was extremely important. but then I also budgeted time for me, as I talked about, to exercise, for social activities. I knew what that looked like, which meant I had to kind of really keep it all together. But, you know, in undergrad, I knew Monday through Thursday was a lot of work, but Friday was always time that I spent, again, with my sorority sisters, right? So we were always together on Friday. We had activities that we would do on Saturday. I knew, okay, this is what I'm going to do on Sunday and how to balance those things. But for me, it was really around time management.
Any other questions?
So in your presentation, you talked a lot about your credentials and all the amazing opportunities you've had, but no journey is really linear. So what adversities or setbacks have you may had in your career, and how were you able to learn from them? And how would you advise us to go through our life when we have challenges?
Great. So yeah, great question. And I kind of alluded to it at my time during Cornell. So Cornell was a very challenging experience for me because that was also when I had my daughter, right? And so as a scientist, trying to balance the career path with being a mom, where traditionally in academia, that would, especially during that particular time, that was unheard of, right? So a lot of people just assume that, okay, you are having a child, so that means your brain doesn't work, you're not going to be able to do the work that you needed to do. So for me, that's where I had to center myself and say, no, my brain still works, I can still generate ideas, I can still write proposals, I can still do the work that I needed to do. And that's where kind of this inner support, you know, really relying on myself to motivate myself, to build communities of people outside of my immediate work circle who were my champions, who helped me to understand how to create the experiences that I needed. So, you know, the success that I talk about is really more, it helped me, right? So that adversity at that particular time helped me to then say, okay, now I have a better sense of how to motivate myself, how to really fortify my vision. And that helped me as I started my academic journey, right? Where if you're familiar with academia, you have to go through this period, usually around 7 years of pre-tenure, right? Where you are working towards showing mastery in this topical area where they say now you are launched into your professorship. That's a time where you have to build a vision for yourself. You have to learn all of these different things around research, teaching, and service. So I was able to apply that adversity that I experienced in that last position to help me really say, when there are naysayers around me, when there are people who I know are saying, okay, you're only here because of X, you're only here because of that, that was a way that I was able to really say, I've already experienced that. I know how to handle it now, and I have my village of people who are going to support me.
Any additional questions?
There's a question about your taxes. Can you explain what that is? And the question is, do you profit from it?
Oh, from my patents. So you can profit from, so when my students and I generate what we call intellectual property. So we design something that is innovative, that's never been done before, that we think could benefit from a commercial standpoint, we can file intellectual property. So I do have several patents that have resulted from some work in our lab. How you end up making money on that is if you start a company based on that, and that's something my husband does, or if someone licenses that work, right? And so companies can license your work. I don't have that experience at the moment, but it is something that we actively work with our university to advertise the work that we're doing, and can be able to use that through either commercialization or if we want to start a company.
So we have a little bit of time left. I am going to allow the teachers to come up front and allow your kids to go back to the classroom so we can have a great dismissal and we can know that everyone is out of the building and back on the bus correctly. So, Ms. Simmons, if you'll take your class first, and then EMT, and then I'll just do a roll call as we're getting students out. So all of the cybersecurity students, if I could have you line up and exit out. And once again, thank you for your behavior, and I appreciate each and every one of you.